Hello everybody, welcome back to Theje's YouTube. Pretty much what I do here is I review the most interesting hardware to come through the PC market, and what I have for you today is an overclocking video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to overclock my Intel Core i5 2500K desktop processor from 3.3 GHz, which is its stock frequency, to 4.2 GHz. Now, the hardware we're going to use to accomplish this task is, first of all, of course, the Intel Core i5 2500K processor, the Zolman cooling fan, which we'll need to cool our CPU while we're overclocking him. This guy is the CNPS 9500AT. I just like the picture of him. He's a big orb of copper blades with a little bit of a fan on the side of him. He's huge, and luckily he fits inside of my case. The motherboard we're going to be using is the MSI Z68MA-ED55, and in parentheses it says B3. Obviously he's the Z68 chipset, which is a very nice chipset to use if you want to overclock your Sandy Bridge i5 or i7 processor. And the graphics card we're going to be using, I already introduced him in a previous video. This is the GB GTX 560 Ti graphics card. He has 1 gig of GDDR5 VRAM, which is laughably less VRAM than in my Clevo notebook that I had before. But, you know what? He's actually clocked a lot faster, so it really doesn't matter. Anyway, let's go ahead and see what we did.
Once upon a time on this channel, I did notebook reviews. Then, I took an arrow to the knee. How we overclock our processor is as easy as going into the BIOS, selecting our desired multiplier, and pressing the Yes Please key, or Enter if you will. Please do make sure your temps are nominal before you engage in your regular activities. A great BIOS temp is 50 degrees, 60 degrees is okay, right around 65 you should dial things down a bit, and continue on with 70 degrees if you don't mind reducing the lifespan of your processor. The first benchmark we'll look at is the first bit of 3D Mark 06. Here in the beginning, we hover at almost 140 frames per second at 3.3 GHz. At 4.2, we hover at over 160. When the thing falls on the dude, we get a little over 60 at 3.3. Then at 4.2, we're at around 70. During the first CPU test, we spend a lot of time at 1, and reach 3 when we're clocked at 3.3 GHz. Then at 4.2, we rarely get 1, and can go up to 4. After all is said and done, we get 22,000 points at 3.3 GHz with a CPU score of 5900. And at 4.2, we get a total of almost 26,000 with a CPU score at 6700. So we definitely see a noticeable improvement in 3D Mark 06. Let's see if 3D Mark 11 is going to give us the same results. With the first test, we can see that it definitely doesn't give us a significant advantage. Here at 3.3 GHz, we have around 24 frames per second. Then at 4.2, we see that the frame rate doesn't improve any at all. The most obvious improvement is in the physics test that uses just the CPU. At 3.3, we're refreshing at 22, and at 4.2, we're refreshing at 26 frames per second. Overall, the score is about even. The graphics score doesn't change, but our physics score, or the CPU score, goes up by a pretty nice margin. I also used the Unigine Heaven benchmark, which gave pretty reliable results, except that they didn't change much at all. I conclude that Unigine is very much so a GPU test, and that we are taxing the GTX 560 Ti at 3.3 GHz here. Also, ignore the clock speeds as they don't reflect the OC to 4.2. Moving on, let's see if we could reproduce these same results in some games. First up, we have StarCraft 2, where we mirror the results seen in 3D Mark 06. With everything set to the highest detail setting, we go as low as 21 frames per second at 3.3 GHz in the heat of a giant 2v2 fight. When we OC to 4.2, we go as low as 28 FPS, a noticeable increase in performance. When the mutas fly in at 2110, we get a respectable sub-50 frame rate at 3.3 GHz, but at 4.2 it barely goes below 60. a proper reflection of the 3D Mark 06 benchmark results, a real CPU-reliant increase in performance. Battlefield 3 gives us the same results that we saw in 3D Mark 11 and the Unigine benchmark. Right at the beginning of the game in the Humvee, we're getting a solid 54 FPS at 3.3 GHz. When we increase to 4.2, there's no change whatsoever. Battlefield 3 must be a GPU-heavy game. In conclusion, what's happening is the Core i5-2500K is taxing the GTX 560 Ti, meaning that it's sending more data to the graphics card than it can handle. When we see improved frame rates from OC'ing, that means that the Core i5 is picking up the slack where there's extra CPU and physics work, increasing our gaming performance. The next upgrade path for this rig should be just a new video card, moving up to either the GTX 560 448 core or the GTX 570 graphics card. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for an introduction piece for this rig, accompanied by more gameplay footage. Thanks for watching, and you guys have a good night.